Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Tamia, folks. I'm here with Blavity today, and I'm so excited to talk to you. I feel like I've been waiting forever and a day for this character to be introduced into the MCU, so it's been so thrilling to finally see it come to fruition on screen. I'm wondering, you woke up this morning, the film is out. Did you do anything to celebrate, or was it straight to press interviews for you?
It was straight to work. Straight to work, but that's a beautiful celebration in itself, to have a movie that is, means so much, not only to myself, but to so many people out in the world for people to consume finally after 9 months of work and almost 2 years of me sitting with this character. So to be able to continue to do work for, on her behalf is definitely a celebration in itself.
Absolutely. And I know that when you were a sophomore in college, you originally auditioned for the role of Shuri, of course, in Black Panther. I'm wondering, though, kind of in your evolution and taking on this role since, what was the thing that kind of kept you grounded as a student as you pursued this acting career? So I'm just wondering, kind of, how did you tackle that as a young person?
Honestly, I think as committed as I was to finishing my degree, which was not at all related to theater or the performing arts in any way, I felt very strongly that in my life I would do something related to or connected to theater. I felt that I would return there some way, somehow, at some point, even if it wasn't in the next 4 or 5 years. So it was really just knowing that that was the thing that brought me the most sort of joy and fulfillment in life, and that I was committed to staying connected to that in some way.
Definitely. And I'm wondering too, in crafting this character, I mean, like you said, you've had 2 years to sit on it and to kind of grow with her. And as you've developed this character, I'm wondering what your research process looked like. Were you, watching Marvel Rising? I'm a nerd about it, so I feel like I was going back and doing all my Riri Williams research once I knew that this character was, going to be on screen. But for you, what was crafting her looking like? Was it making it your own in a different way, or was it kind of citing back to the old comics to learn about the character?
It was definitely going back to the comics. Like that was the first thing that I did was go back to her appearances in Invincible Iron Man, and then of course in her own comics, and just sort of do as much like deep diving as I can from there. Since we know Riri does, she has a habit of just popping up in other storylines. So that's definitely where I started, but I think once I had that information sort of under my belt, then the next step was also leaving equally as much room for her presentation on screen to be completely different or significantly different or just different in any way. Because I think that is something that I do enjoy about the adaptations of Marvel comic books to movies and now series. Is how much more is possible once you get that camera rolling. So, also the initial conversation that I had with Ryan in 2020 about who Riri was to him, since I'm so fortunate that the words Riri speaks and the creation of her, the real crafting of her it's been like a privilege to speak the words of Chinaka Hodge and to have Riri Williams be a character that was developed by this brilliant Black woman. And Ryan was really step one in that because there was no Riri in the MCU in this way prior to this movie, obviously. So it was equally the comics and hearing what his thoughts and hopes and ideas were about how she shows up in this space. And then from there, kind of working backwards, since the series, of course, didn't start until the filming for Wakanda Forever had concluded. So it was really with the sporadic information that I obtained from this whirlwind adventure in Wakanda, what can I infer and how can I dive deeper into Riri Williams as we come to know her in her space.
Definitely. I love that you bring up her space because I have to, of course, mention Chicago. I'm a Midwest girl, so knowing
Yes.
that Riri is from there is so exciting for me. I'm really curious too, in a franchise like Black Panther, where Wakanda being a place is so much informing the culture and the story that they're telling. How do you feel, or what are you most excited for fans to see about the way that Riri's upbringing is portrayed both at MIT and getting to go home to Chicago?
Yeah, I think it would be a lost opportunity for Chicago to not be included in the telling of Riri Williams and who she is and any adventure that she goes on, since that is, of course, where she's from, specifically the South Side. And so I'm very grateful, and I believe that Marvel sort of had the same thinking because Chicago is very much a factor. There's like a small reference to it at the end of Wakanda Forever, but once we get to really sit down with Riri, then we definitely come to know that Chicago is, it's almost a character in itself, in the sense that the way that where we're all from in one way or another becomes sort of the growing point for who we are or who we become. And the South Side is not unlike that for Riri.
Definitely. And one of the things I love about this film and also about the comics is that Riri's story has always kind of been intersecting with real issues that we deal with in the world, whether that be grief and losing people, or I know in the comics she lost family to gun violence. And so do you feel any sort of responsibility, I guess, in taking on these heavier topics and bringing in this character? You know, there's a lot of characters who come in with cheers and a lot of energy behind them. It's all
Yeah.
sunshine and rainbows, but you know, you were really tasked with taking on a really heavy story. And so I'm wondering kind of how that influenced your shaping of the character.
I think honestly, I think it was almost like a foundational, I want to say, principle of like who she is to keep in mind when playing her. But I think one of the things that's beautiful about Ryan Coogler's Riri Williams and also Eve Ewing's Riri Williams and of course Chinaka Hodge's Riri Williams is that and especially once we get to spend some more time with Chinaka in Ironheart, is the fact that she is first and foremost a young Black woman. She's a young Black woman navigating the world, and then you add on to that that she's 19, and you add on to that that she's from Chicago, and you add on to that that she has this super genius mind. Then all of these other elements of who she is come into play, and that's where we get to sort of have fun and go on these crazy adventures, because also add on to that that she exists in a world where supernatural things really do happen quite frequently. So I think that in Marvel's sort of responsibility to tell that story and to represent that. I say that's definitely our joint responsibility, but chiefly Marvel's responsibility to make sure that they're representing that perspective with authenticity. I think that it's become a very beautiful thing at the hands of, again, a very skilled writer to be able to tackle these issues in a way that doesn't step outside of how we are required in our everyday life here on the real planet Earth to tackle these issues in our everyday lives, like the grief that we experience, the love that we experience, the joy that we experience. They're all equally as important when it comes to us navigating life. Sometimes one thing more than the other. I think in Wakanda Forever, thankfully, Riri is someone who I've been hearing is someone that folks sort of see as almost like a little bit of levity and lightness for them to grab onto in the midst of this very, very large story that's being told. And I think that the way that that is one element of who she is, there's so many other elements of who she is, of which grief is one of them, of which reckoning with her ambition is another, and of which living her life as a 19-year-old who is also really, really smart is another. So yeah, I think there's a healthy mix of grounded issues and experiences for her to tap into and for y'all to enjoy.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have just such an all-star lineup of a cast in this movie, but of course, the thing that I was grabbing onto was just how many Black women we're getting to see on screen in this film.
Yes.
For you, just like, what does the mentorship in that set look like, or even just like the companionship that you get to have? Any fun memories that you can share? Because I just cannot imagine being in the same room as all those people.
Man, honestly, I think that's really it. It's being in the same room as all of these incredible people. I'll never forget like the table read that we had before we started filming anything. The first folks that I went up to were Michaela Cole and Angela Bassett, and I'm typically someone I think that kind of just likes to stay in my lane, stay in my role, and allow people to be. But I had to. It felt like this strong conviction to let them know as if they don't already know how incredible and how brilliant they are, but also like the impact that they've had on me and what it means for me to be in the same room with them, sharing a script, sharing a story, sharing a screen with them. So it's an honor, but it's also like the deepest joy to be able to say that these folks for this film are my peers, people that I get to play with on screen, people that I get to learn from off screen. So a joy.
Yes, and we know that Angela Bassett as the Queen Mother is kind of, losing her and bringing you in. Like that was such a big part of this plot that I found to be so profound, because to have Riri come in this moment where we're losing something so great and so tremendous that people have really attached to for these last couple years, and looking back at the Black Panther film for the first one. So I guess, how does that feel to know that you were a part of the closure and the fulfillment of her story as well? I thought it was just such a powerful thing to watch.
I definitely think it's a beautiful moment just talking about the reflection and just I guess the variation, but also like the array of like Black women excellence on screen. I think to think that of course Queen Ramonda, that's a presence that is similar to T'Challa. That's a presence that is over the film from the moment that it begins, and most certainly well beyond when it ends. She's even the one who says herself that like death is not the end for us, you know. So I think that's a very beautiful thing very beautiful concept to be able to have when we consider the fact that we've lost her in that film. And at the same time, I think it's like blowing my mind to think that, yeah, just like you're saying, but then still, and also there's also the continuation of the story. It still does look like Black womanhood. It still does look like the Black female experience. Now maybe it's something very different than what we started out with, but it's no less truthful.
Definitely. And I'm also wondering, on a lighter note, just looking at your own college experience and knowing that that is what we're about to see Riri go through, whether we're, looking back to how she's getting there or being there presently. I'm wondering just like, how did it differ from your time at Cornell? I know that you're in a sorority, you have, of course, friends and sisterhood and people who are supporting you, but one of Riri's like main storylines is that she kind of has no sense of community at times. I'm wondering kind of, how do we explore that there, and how did your experience inform that story?
I definitely relate to that experience. I was first gen. No one in my family had gone to college before. I'm also first generation American. So it was a lot of like, if I ever felt like a fish out of water, being at an Ivy League institution was definitely like the height of that. Until, of course, I sort of understood the way this college thing goes, or at least the way that it was going for me over at Cornell, and then was able to sort of be intentional about being a part of and also contributing to the communities that I like really respected on campus, which were Wanawake Wawori, that beautiful house of Black women with a incredible history there at that institution, and then of course with the Mu Gamma chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So that was a journey that I'm thankful to have been able to make and to sort of have found my footing by the end of it. But I think with Riri, there's definitely like empathy there in understanding like, especially her being this super genius, having this skill that separates her not only just sort of innately by whatever college dynamics are going on, but also just at this school where she's supposed to be amongst her peers. She's surpassing them and maybe even some of her professors as well. So I think taking that into account, along with the journey that her ambition sort of led to in Wakanda Forever, it really was it becomes a very clear lesson in considering Riri Williams' brilliance and what that actually means for someone to live with that on a day-to-day, to consider her genius and how that impacts her life, when you also start to consider the fact that she's still a 19-year-old girl who lost someone that she loved, and you know, just also adding the regular aspects of life on top of that.
For sure. And I know we're almost about to run out of time, so I want to do some rapid fire questions. I am wondering when you're in your green room or you're on a set and you're trying to, get back down, chill, like take a moment away from those moments that are a little bit tougher to portray on screen. What calms you down and what are you kind of like keeping in your space to keep you level-headed and calm?
I definitely keep candles. I have an array of candles. I don't know if I should say that on camera if I'm allowed to have them in my trailer, but I do. Also, my yoga mat. That's like top three. It's coming with me everywhere, on location, studio, wherever we are. My yoga mat is coming. A speaker so I can play my music, and what else? I think that's my top three right there. Those are my top three.
Talked a lot about faith on your journey and being in this role and how everything was kind of divine from not getting Shuri to coming into this position and having this character to explore. How has faith kind of impacted your journey on exploring this character as well?
I think faith is like definitely the most beautiful gift I've received in this little life of mine. And I'm very grateful to have been given sort of like an unshakable faith, I think, that my parents passed on. But that really is the guiding light. That's sort of like when I show up and do my job, it's the faith that it will go where it needs to go, it'll do what it needs to do, that the purpose of me being wherever it is that I am will reveal itself, and prayerfully it will be something that is positive and meaningful to, if not anyone else, then to me and my family and those that have some hope and some positive joy for whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yes. And last question to end. I'm just wondering if you had any advice to share with young Black women, young Black people who are looking up to you and taking on this role. What advice would you share for continuing to follow those dreams, even if they are sometimes out of the scope of what you might have aligned or visioned for yourself when you were younger?
I would say one step at a time. It gets really easy to think about the macro and to get lost in that or concerned with that, but I really do think that nothing is more important than the moment that you're in now. And I don't say that to mean like, "Ah, relax, take a load off, get comfy." Definitely work, but I think that once you've identified what that thing is for you, that showing up as your very best self and offering the very best version of yourself to that present moment is oftentimes the quickest way to get to where you want to be. I was just realizing that this moment here, even just talking with you on the press tour for Wakanda Forever, is definitely like the consequence of past actions, of past present moments, and former answered prayers. So I think definitely to take it one step at a time, to have that faith and do what you need to do to replenish that so that you can continue to give your best in that moment.
Definitely. Well, it was such a pleasure to meet you. I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to finally see this character and to finally meet you. It was such a lovely time.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.